with you. Just want to help you out with these factoring notes. If you would, flip to page 2 in your factoring book. As you're watching this video, feel free to pause, go back to things. I'm going to go through it pretty quickly. So you may have to pause it just to warn you. Number 1, the title of today's notes, factoring trinomial expressions with a equal to 1. What the heck does it mean by a equal to 1? I'd like you down here just to write me a little something. Ax squared plus bx plus c. This is called standard form of a quadratic expression. Quadratic expressions are usually trinomials because we have an x squared, an x, and something without an x. And a refers to this leading coefficient. So today's factoring problems, we are factoring trinomials, and we're not just factoring out a GCF, we're actually factoring the whole thing. But the big thing here is you need to just call that x squared, basically. We're just doing ones where a is just 1. So we're basically just saying x squared plus something x plus something else. Although today we're going to get into what if this plus is a minus. But before we do, just to give you a quick review, scroll down here. Let's talk about any old trinomial. How do we factor? I always approach it like this, you guys. I circle the last number and I think to myself, what are factors of this that add to give me this? Factors of 8 that add to 6, well, that would be 4 and 2. These always go in the second half of our parentheses, and in the first half we have x's because everything's plus here. It's pretty simple. But I will point out that sometimes things aren't always plus. For example, this one, we have some minuses, and some of you could probably correctly guess that means there's probably going to be some sort of negative in our factors in those binomials. So if you're ready, go ahead and flip the page, and let's talk about some of those negatives. We're going to start right here in this section. There are only 2 ways to get a positive number as a product. You can multiply 2 positives, or you could do the opposite. You can multiply 2 negatives. In other words, you have 2 of the same sign that you multiply together, you always get a positive number. So what that tells me is if my last number says plus, that means the middle numbers, the middle term, must have been achieved by either adding 2 positives or adding 2 negatives together. I know that I have x squared in both of these. I know that factors of 6 that add to 5 are 2 and 3 in both of these, but there's a slight difference if you look closely. This one has a negative and this one has a positive, and all that means is that these 2 signs will be plus in the first one, but these 2 signs will be negative simply because when I multiply this out using the box, I'm going to get 2 negative quantities, and those will add together to give me my negative 5x. But when I multiply my 2 negatives together, I still get a positive 6. So just to summarize that, if the last sign is positive, your 2 factors will each have the same sign. In other words, this sign will match the sign of the first term. So right here, plus, that means we're going to have 2 of the same sign. Since the other one is plus, they will both be positive. I'd like you to pause the video and tell me plus, plus, minus, minus for these, if that's appropriate. I'll give you a hint. The first one's plus, plus. And then we will move on and do some things. But go ahead and hit pause. When you're ready, hit play again and check. This one is minus, minus. Welcome back. This one is plus, 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 minus, minus, plus, 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 minus, 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 minus. And all I'm doing, I'm looking at the last term. Since it's plus, I know I have doubles. And then I'm just looking at the first term. My duplicates should match that. And we factor it the same way we always have. However, if the last term is negative, things do get a little tricky. This means one sign has to be positive and the other has to be negative. However, I want to make it easy on you. There's a different way to think about this. instead of thinking about, positive, negative, negative, positive, or adding, subtracting, I'd always approach these problems the same way. Factors of this. Then look at this last sign here. Now we're going to subtract to get this. Factors of 60 that subtract to give you 4. So that last sign actually tells you whether you're going to add or subtract your factors. In this case, it wouldn't make sense to add them. You can't add any factors of 60 to get 4, but you can subtract them. And if you're clever, you may have already gotten it. 10 and 6 do multiply to 60, but they also subtract to 4. The issue here is I can't call these both plus because that would give me positive 16. I can't call them both minus. That would give me negative 16. They'd also both give me positive 60. One has to be negative. The other has to be positive. How do you tell which? Well, which one minus the other would give me positive 4? And the answer is positive 10 minus 6. Just to summarize that, if the last sign is negative, then the difference of our numbers will give us the middle term. What I'd like you to do, guys, is try the next few examples on your own. If you need help, raise your hand or come and see me. I'd like you to copy this flowchart from the board as well. I expect to see each and every one of you before the end of class. Thank you very much.